Now that we've gone over how to make complex forms into more simpler forms, now it's the time to actually start applying shading to our artwork. Now, like I said before in the shading video, there's all kinds of different ways that you can shade. I'm just going to show one of my more preferred methods that will get some realistic shading going on. So I drew this small still life that I got from a reference site, and now I'm going to work on shading it. Now, with my method, normally what I do is I get a ground down, meaning I don't do this enough to, you know, just get rid of it. I do it enough just to get myself away from pure white paper. So this is called setting a ground. Now that I've got that, I'll take a blending stump. I want to make sure it's a clean blending stump, so all that would have gotten on my paper if I not too clean, not too dirty. And now I'm gonna kind of move in circles. I'm using watercolor paper here, so it's a little bumpy. Got a little bit of texture to it, but a little bit of texture never hurt anybody. So, notice how my blending stump is flat against the paper. I'm not using the tip of it. I'm just going flat against the paper. This is allowing me to smooth everything out, spread my color evenly. You don't want to spread it so much that you lose your drawing underneath. You need to be able to at least see some remnant of it under there. Make sure I'm still within frame. Kind of put a little too much there, but that's okay. Doesn't mean I can't take it back out again. Going in circles is best. I'm working on a larger area, so. And like I said, cold pressed paper kind of makes it a little interesting. So let's go a little bit of the opposite direction, just to get it good and smoothed out. Okay, now that I've got a gray down, now I don't have to worry about filling in near as much. Now, it's not like a truly dark gray, it's just enough that we're able to get some form of shadow and highlights and everything else to stand out. Now, once my middle's down, the first thing I go with next is my darker shadows. I start putting in shadows. Highlights are something you kind of want to do a little bit last because you don't want to overwork your highlights or underwork your highlights. You want to be able to have just the right amount. And if you start with highlights now, well, your shading for your shadows might blend over into it and you just kind of wasting a lot of effort. So I always start with my darker shadows after I get this middle ground set. Now, looking at my reference, I can tell in here I have darker shadows, so I'm gonna go back in here. And you notice how far back my hand is on my pencil. I'm using the side of my pencil. I could have drawn this apple a little bit bigger, but that's in the past. It'll work for now. So it's really dark at the top. That's because it's a very red apple. And being that it's a very red apple, I probably need to shade this in. really dark. Give it a little bit more of that middle before I go into that. Okay, let's blend it out. Remember, you start in your darkest area first. And blend out from there. I'm going to make sure my edges are a little bit refined. Work in circles, scuffle it a little bit. Yeah, that's starting to look more like the correct coloring a little bit. So now I'm going to go back in with this, and I know it's really dark. That's almost absolute black right there. So I'm going to add pressure. My hand moved up on my pencil. I still kind of have it, I don't have it straight up and down and such like a writing position. I still have my hand a little far back. I want to make a hard line right here because it's a hard line on my apple. I've got this line here that I need to worry about. Darker back here. I got a little area right in here that's a little bit darker and lighter than the others. It's all a balancing act. You have to go, okay, where's my stuff, basically. If you don't figure out where your stuff is, figure out where your shadows and your highlights and your midtones and stuff are, then you can't really get what you need in place. I don't want to add too much to right here because I don't have my good erasers. I just have my kneaded eraser on me. Okay. Now the stem, now it's very dark here on the tip. So I'm going to color that as dark as I possibly can. Just go like this. Put some detail in. Okay. Like I said, we're saving our highlights and stuff for last. So now that we've got some more dark shadows in, we can blend it out a little bit. Blend it in together. Not too much, just enough to smooth it on out. Now next, I'm gonna work on this middle apple. Make sure I'm still in frame. There we go. So looking at it, it's not got near as many darks as this one back here, nor even this one on the far end. So I need to pay attention exactly where my darks and lights are. So obviously we have some shadows coming out like this, judging by how this is. So we're going to go up, we're going to curve, and we're going to make a bigger body of it. I'm going to cut around that off. Let's make that a little too sharp. So This apple right here has a lot of texture, so I'm going to be blocking in a lot of my shadows, especially right in here. Now I'm going to be adding a little bit of detail in. Not a lot, just enough for me to follow some shadows, because some areas are patchy and follow the stripes. Now, I do notice right in here, I've got a bit of a shadow here, and of course, we have somewhat of an occlusion shadow right here, and it starts to curve from here, and it goes off the page. So see, it goes off the page. So now I can work in here. If we go to this one right here, you'll see it is much darker, and it actually causes a sharp boundary between this apple and this one. So if I add in darker shadows in this area, especially down here in that dark part, because it's really dark right there, even though the shadow is a little bit lighter than that, it's still got a really dark line. I'm starting to get a drawing hand. You think I would know better? I'm gonna pull an old trick. Alright, now, see if I can find a piece of printer paper. And since I don't have my drawing gloves, yeah, there we go. This is an old drawing trick. Keeps your hand, the oils from your hand from rubbing your drawing, keeps your drawing from getting messed up. Also keeps your hands cleaner. I'm used to this. This is life. This is just normal for me. So you can already see the oils from my hand, it rubbing from my hand onto the paper here. So let's go back this way. I'm making some adjustments to my drawing. Now I'm gonna go in with my blending stump again, and of course I'm gonna smooth it on out. I'm gonna smooth out this area. Back up a little bit more. When you're drawing realistically, you don't want too many really hard edges. You want to kind of have somewhat softer edges because things in real life don't really have those full straight on edges. It's best to kind of block in your shadows and kind of work backwards. Some artists actually do value first before they even get their lines in, and then they just kind of build their drawing around the value. It's a little bit more of an advanced technique. I've done it when drawing people. It actually sometimes really helps when you're drawing people to do it that way. I'm gonna make that a little darker here. Not too dark. I don't want it to be the same as this. You have to know what's the difference between here and here. Y'all are capable of that. Y'all can do that. Y'all can figure out the difference. Now I'm gonna put the stem back in. It's really dark right there, and then it curves down, and it has a little bit of a shadow here, but we still can make it a little darker like that. And then of course this stem needs to come back in over here. Let's adjust our paper. It really dark because it is really dark in our reference photo. In fact, it makes it very dark in here. Where it practically let's shade it out a little. Now there is another shadow, so remember what I said before. We need to measure out kind of where it is, so we go up the apple a little ways, about right in here. So I have this shadow going to right about here. I can make it go up a little bit more, because in fact it does go up a little bit more, but it's coming out right around in here. Now remember, cast shadows aren't always going to take the perfect shape of the form. It just depends on how much you see of the cast shadow. Now I'm going to add the shading for the shadow. I want to be darker than this, but lighter than this. I know that seems very odd to say. And I want to do it evenly. That's the key here. You have to do it evenly. This is an occlusion shadow right here, so it can get really dark. Now remember, we are going to blend this out. I'm going to make it darkest near the base. Remember, this is slightly darker because it's darker on our reference photo. That I've got that, we of course blend it on out. I tend to start in my darks and going in circles, laying this flat. Gets a really even blend. Really even blend. And if your shadow's not dark enough, you just simply add more. My shadow is not dark enough to me, so mainly over in here. So I lay down more material and I blend it out. Now, the quality of paper is also causing some of this texture. Now looking at that, I'm going to add a little bit of shading in here. I'm going to smooth out this apple here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a girl's best friend, well, mainly an artist's best friend, and that's the eraser. I'm going to fade out around here, not enough to, you know, get rid of the gray entirely. You know. So, just enough that we get some contrast. Now, right in there we have a problem. That needs to be defined a little bit more. So, a little bit out. So you just take a little out. And you put a little back in. It helps get a big, better definite edge. Especially. Now notice with my pencil right here, I'm not like laying down a really hard line. I'm laying down just something, just enough to cause a separation. And I'm not doing it all the way around. Now, on these apples, there's a lot of highlights, a lot of little speckles and everything. So, right in here is one of the main prominent highlights, and it's a very harsh highlight. So, I'm just going to go right there with that. There's another highlight right in here. And another right in there. There's one right here. There's one coming right up this way. You've got kind of a weird reflected highlight coming out this way. Now we've got a highlight right here along the stem. If you have a kneaded eraser, it's best to form it to the tip that you need. There's some right here on the stem. There's that one there. Although I kind of took up a little too much. So I'll go back in with this. Just enough to put back in there. Alright, let's look a little further. Right in here. Sometimes you will find that some of the brightest highlights might actually be right up against some of your darkest areas. I'm gonna fade it out right in here because it's technically got a little thing going on right there. There's a little bit of a halo effect right there. So I'm gonna take this and I'm going to make sure it's right along that edge. I'm gonna blend the edge a little bit. So, then let's look for some others. I know there's one right in here, but it's not very prominent, so I'm not gonna do a lot of erasing. Just enough to bring it out. Then let's look at all the little speckles. The speckles are going to be the fun part. So normally at this stage, if you were going to do all these little speckles, you would have to have a little bit of a stiffer eraser, or you can have a electric eraser that would work with this. I'm stuck with just this right here for right now. So I just gotta kind of hope. Oop, wrong end. That has sepia tone on it. I'm going to just give some of those little white spots definition. Just give a little bit. Just a wee bit, just a wee bit. Oh, I got most of highlight here. So, as you can see, my students, that is simply how you would go about shading. Simple demonstration. So, let's go quickly back over the steps. Once you get your contour lines down, what you do next is you lay in a gray. You lay in that middle ground, and then you blend it out. Then you go in with your darker highlights. I just said darker highlights. You go in with your shadows and make sure that they are the appropriate tones, blending them out as needed, following what your reference states. So I wouldn't have done this the same tone as this because they're two different tones. So you have to kind of match your tones the best you can. Then, after that, once you got all your dark spaces in, all your middle, your dark, all of that done, blended out, ready to go, you would go in with your eraser and start bringing out your highlights. Now, there will be some places where you really need like a stronger eraser to get as bright of a white as possible. Some people use, if you're working with charcoal, some people will use white charcoal to help bring that out a little bit. When you're working in pencil, like this is just a really, really dark pencil. When you're working in pencil like this, it's a little bit harder to deal with. You just mainly want to erase out the absolute best that you can and not try to shove the tooth of your paper down. So that is the basics on how to apply shadows to a form. Basically, use your reference, middle ground, dark shadows, highlights, and then of course you can always go back in with your pencil, with a sharpened pencil, and put back in some detail areas if you need to make some more definition. Now granted, I'm not 100% done with this drawing. I still haven't quite done the background with the wood grain. With that, I would just lightly, I wouldn't copy it exactly. And of course right in here is a really dark area. On my reference, this blends out a little bit, but as you can see, I've got almost a completed drawing, and it's only due to the fact that I broke down my objects from complex forms to simple forms. They were already fairly simple forms though. I made sure the proportions and scale were correct. Then I applied shadows, and now I got a nice little drawing going on. So I hope this really helps you in our next assignment. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a comment via Google Classroom, and I'll help you the absolute best that I can. So I'll see y'all next time.